Ready to get y'all's day started? For some of you, it might already be. If you're on the East Coast, it's like, what, 10 o'clock? If you're way out in the middle of the ocean like Frank, it's 11, maybe noon. He's probably still asleep. Welcome to another Devil's Brew. I got mine here. Get yours. What's today? Wednesday? Yeah, Wednesday. This is just open panel. Oh, let me put the link. Open panel. Kind of check the news. Actually, before I do that, I think I do have a few tweets and maybe a video. Inflation slowed down in May. Consumer prices up at 3.3% from a year ago. What is she doing? Hang on. I got to look at her. Ocasio-Cortez, AOC. Oh, and Jamie Raskin both. Okay, they're trying to introduce legislation to rein in a fundamentally unaccountable and rogue Supreme Court. What is this about? Hang on. So Congress is trying to, because they're one of the checks and balances of the Supreme Court. So AOC and Raskin are trying to get Congress to use that to put some kind of restraint on the court. Rogue court. What's rogue about it? It's an independent branch of government. And it's not unaccountable. We have a system of checks and balances. In fact, why do we do that? Hey, yeah, I know. I thought the same thing. It said consumer prices. I wonder if that's like a good measure. I don't know. I don't know economics. Economies. I don't know what it's even called. Let's see. Ooh, Gemini Bank. Oh, what was I doing? The checks and balances. The 3. And hey, freak, by the way. Happy morning. Oh, that reminds me. I got to put this on a social media. Oh, did I put the link? All right. See, I'm trying to do all kind of things at once. Hang on. Oh, wait. No, I was going to hold off on the link. I will put the link at some point. Fuck. Hang on. I'm unorganized right now. Okay. Fuck. Alrighty, I am back. So Congress makes the laws, but the president can veto the laws. Congress controls the budget, which can limit the president's ability to carry out programs. So anything the president wants to do, Congress is the one that has to fund it. And so they have some influence that way. They can impeach, which allows them to charge and remove the president and other federal officials. I'm not sure who those are, but they can remove people from office. And they confirm presidential appointments for judges and cabinet positions, so that they have some kind of check on who he appoints. The president can veto the laws passed by Congress, but Congress can override a veto with 2/3 in both houses. The president enforces the laws, so Congress makes the laws, and the president sees to it that they're enforced or not enforced. He appoints the federal judges, including the Supreme Court justices, but they require confirmation by the Senate, which is part of Congress. He can issue executive orders that have the force of law, but these can be overturned by the Supreme Court if found unconstitutional, which is, I think, what happened to that anti-woke order that Trump tried to do, and it didn't make it to the Supreme level, but at one of the levels, I think one of the federal levels, it got found unconstitutional and put on hold, and it never made it out of that. Um, so the president can issue executive orders that have the force of law. So if you think there's a one-party system and Biden and Trump are going to issue the same exact executive orders, if you look at the ones they've already issued, they're almost opposed. So I don't know what that does for the uniparty theory, but it seems like most people would have a preference for one set over the other. I'm still wrestling with it. Today on my midday show, I'm going to start taking a look at Biden's mental health strategy. He passed a big mental health bill. Remember I said like we had about March of 20 was lockdown. And then February of 2022 was the invasion of Ukraine. And March of that year is when he passed this big mental health thing. So the COVID period, the 2 years of COVID that ended with the invasion of Ukraine, this plan kind of looks at mental health care from that point onward because it makes a lot of reference to the impacts of COVID on mental health. So some of the strategy is kind of post-COVID and taking COVID and pandemic effects into account. So we'll look at that this afternoon. But that's an example of the type of orders that Biden or presidents can implement. And we looked at that the one the equity one that he issued to rescind the one that Trump tried to issue and then expand on his vision of what that should be. We looked at that the other day too. So they can do that, but the Supreme Court could come in and say, no, you can't do that. And then here we go, the Supreme Court. They interpret the laws and the Constitution, and they can declare the laws passed by Congress or actions taken by the president, such as these executive orders, unconstitutional. Okay, so that's one of their roles. They're supposed to be able to do that. Decisions can be limited by future laws passed by Congress. So if the court makes a decision people don't like, Congress can make a law that alters the impact that decision can have or how that decision can affect existing laws going forward. Although the court can still rule on the constitutionality of these new laws. So Congress can make laws to limit or restrict rulings, but even those laws they have to convince the Supremes that they're constitutional. So that to me seems like maybe the weakest of the checks, but still a check if it's followed as it's supposed to be. So there we go. We have checks. So let me see what this rogue court thing is. To have even the Supreme Court be subject to the same 50 gift rule that he and I are subject to. Oh, so Congress has rules on like the amount of gifts they can receive, and because of the stuff coming out about all the like donations that certain justices have been getting, Clarence Thomas, I think. Oh yeah, I heard about the flag thing at Alito's home. That seems so silly to me. But they're holding that against Alito. Did y'all hear about the flag controversy? What I forgot what that's in response to. Are you talking about if they try to make laws to restrict the Supreme Court law? Yeah, it would have the Supreme Court. They can't just come in. They have to. It has to like someone has to enter into the process so it can make its way to the Supremes. Hang on, I lost my place. Oh, okay, the flag thing. When did this happen? This was in. Oh, this just happened. Oh, okay. I just heard about it. I thought it was an old thing in the past that I only just heard about, but this actually just happened. Oh my God. Okay, y'all, listen to this flag story. Justice Alito. So, Justice Alito's wife got into some kind of argument with the neighbors. And so, as a result, she put an upside down flag. She displayed an upside down flag. And that's something that was used by the Stop the Steal movement, the Trump, the election deniers. And everyone's freaking out about it. Like the Democrats are freaking out. And Alito's like, I didn't put the flag up. That's my wife. She's her own person. She's accountable for her own opinions. I told her not to put it up. And the Democrats are crying everything they can possibly scream at this guy. Racist, um, fascist, Nazi, and they're freaking out. So I think in addition to the Clarence Thomas like luxury donation stuff, um, they're using this flag thing to make like the court itself a target. This is so see, this is what's pushing me away from the Dems. And one of them says, terribly, terribly alarming. To fly the flag upside down means a very specific thing. Well, according to you, you don't get to say what it means for everybody else. It is not enough to just say my wife got mad. Consider me as alarmed as I could possibly be. Does this not sound Karen? Does this not sound like the most Karen thing to say about a flag? And that's what this. The Democrats are the party of the Karens now. I think that's what the point of all of this is. Um, and I do not want Karens running the country. I don't even like them running my workplace. Yeah, right. I don't know if I made that clear, but as part of those checks and balances, the Supreme Court rules on the constitutionality once there's a challenge to it. So anyway, they're trying to pass this legislation to rein in the rogue Supreme Court, which is like accepting donations and flying flags. Their wives flying flags. It seems like social policing, not anything actually related to politics and people's lives. It's the highest court in the land with the lowest ethical standards. These are the only governmental officials who are not governed by a binding ethics code. There's no process by which we can hold any of them accountable. Well, I don't know about that. He might have a point there. So maybe like if this gets a little process in place, but as far as the rogue court and everything, I think he's saying the court itself is unaccountable, like the justices, their behavior, their codes, not necessarily their rulings. They're trying to police the way the justices conduct themselves. And he even says, this is his words, and so we need to clean that up. Oh my God, these are in every movie growing up, like Harper Valley PTA, all those high school movies. These kind of people were the bad guys in the comedy, or they were like the part of the comedy, the version of society that you were rooting against, and you were rooting for the young people. That's what they sound like. They sound like the Karens and the prudes. And you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, back in my day, the prudes were the Christians. They were the church ladies. And this is like the liberal democratic version of church ladies. It's not religious, but it's ideological. And because they didn't get elected through a religious movement, they don't seem like, you don't really catch that they're the church lady type, the church lady version. And then Dick Durbin's introducing legislation on Supreme Court ethics, which moved to floor via unanimous consent. The Supreme Court adopted a new code of ethics in November, but Democrats said its impact is hampered by the ability for each justice to enforce it upon itself. So they have a code, they just don't have an enforcement mechanism. So this seems like minor policy stuff that they could look at and get something in place without having to like cast it as the court is out of control, and that's their whole narrative. It's catastrophizing. It is democracy is in peril. If we don't win this one final election, democracy is doomed. It's the court is out of control. If we don't win this one final election, then the Supreme Court is going to be this unaccountable monster just running roughshod over our government. And none of that's true, or I don't think any of that's true. I don't think it's even close to true. I think it's a narrative. I think they're cherry picking some facts to fit into their story. And I said the other day, it's the same story that started in 2016 when Donald Trump got elected. It kind of galvanized him into this bubble, and this narrative developed. When Northrop Frye says when the myths of concern start to close off and become a closed myth of concern, that's what this narrative became, and it's still in that same state. I noticed it the other day when Midbro watched the Robert De Niro video. He was repeating the same narrative too. That's why I think if we learn, we don't have to learn every single narrative out there. If we learn these basic collections of stories that like how they're currently clustered together, like Christianity or religion could be one of them, science. The social left has a Marxist progressive set of stories. Capitalism is a set of stories, etc. We could start seeing how individual stories fit into these larger stories, and we can start figuring out how these larger stories fit together. There's got to be some unity in there. Karen had always been a dim. Yes, and you know what? Here's the thing that had me blind to them for a while. We have our version of them back home in the South, but they're not Karen-y, and they're not as obnoxious, and I know how to deal with them. So they've never been an issue. The Southern Karens have never been an issue for me. I know how to handle those just fine. When I came up here to the Pacific Northwest, and it's more bureaucratic, corporate, that my first boss, in fact, like almost every single boss I've had was a Karen. I didn't even know what they were, and I was working for them, and I was having friction with them the whole time because of their like micromanaging, managerial style. Well, like the Karens. But I didn't know the name for them till 2020 when all those social media videos started coming out of the like the examples of Karens. But they've been in workplaces, they've been in HR, they've been in the mental health agencies, and this is where I see them a lot: the medical healthcare, the doctor's offices, the hospitals. So that's the first time I like had a concept of what a Karen was as a specific species of modern human. And the ones growing up on the right that were kind of like that, like I said, were the religious Christian church lady types. And I stayed, they were not in my life all the time. I stayed away from them. I knew how to like avoid them so that they were not a problem in my life. I didn't have my life at the mercy of anything they were involved in. And so I never really had to encounter them. And so when I learned about a Karen, it did seem like something specifically from the left. Those like, oh yeah, is that the couple that was in the yard and they came outside with their guns during COVID? Was I doing something? Oh, I was looking at news. So yeah, that attorney general thing. Oh, and I think I had a few tweets, and I did have a video, which maybe we can watch the video and then call it a morning. This is really, the morning one is designed to be a little check-in, get through a cup of coffee or two, start your day. If people want to come up and do a panel, there's that opportunity, but it's not necessary. And then I'll always be back at midday at 3 p.m. to do my normal stream, like a little short topic and panel. Oh, listen to this. Speaking of introducing bills, listen what the Republicans just introduced. J.D. Vance and Representative Michael Cloud introduced a bill that would axe, that means cut, that means chop, that means get rid of all DEI positions in the federal government and bar federal contractors from requiring DEI statements and training sessions. It would also ban DEI requirements and accreditation. Okay. Oh, so that's at the federal level. So that would be that Department of Behavioral Health Equity, maybe, that's I looked at the other day, that's starting to introduce things. This is what I figured out. I'm looking at the peer curriculum, and I'm looking at the version I was taught. And believe it or not, I shouldn't be, but I'm surprised at how much of what I talk about on the stream is right out of that basic peer training manual that I was trained under. Self-empowerment, managing your locus of control, managing your reactions, taking responsibility, self-care, all that kind of stuff. Everything I've been preaching on here the whole time is like almost out of that manual word for word, and I'm not even realizing it. And so I was looking at that, and then I was looking at the Biden initiatives, because a lot of the changes that are being introduced, I think are coming from that. And it seems to be that emphasis, it's two things. It's this DEI stuff, this idea that there's these racial inequities and we need to address them in mental health care, which I've never seen them happen before. In fact, the only time in my entire that I can remember in the peer community here in Seattle, after Trump got elected, there was one of the peers that they had discovered had voted for Trump. And there were some peers that wanted to exclude this guy from future peer activities and events because of his vote for Trump. And I said, absolutely not. You cannot hold that against the person. He's still a peer. He's still one of us. He still shares the same struggles and insight and experience and knowledge. You cannot hold somebody's political voice against them. That's the only time I've even seen an attempt to exclude anybody from the peer movement. It's a pretty open movement. It's one of the most open movements. Like it lets me in. It's one of the most open movements I've ever seen. Like exclusion is not a problem unless you vote for Trump, I guess. So that's why I think this is projection. I think they're so obsessed about diversity, equity, and inclusion because they're the ones that secretly want to exclude. I said the other day about everybody being themselves, like, be your authentic self. Don't let society keep you from being who you are. It's if you're this identity or this pronoun or that. But then if you're white or male or gifted, sometimes neurodivergent, autistic, but particularly those things, religious or Christian, you're supposed to be aware of your impact on other people and manage your expression and hold it in. And so it affects people in less negative ways. So there's two different messages about who's free to be themselves and express and who should be holding that expression in. And it's based on surface demographics and surface characteristics. So I see, that's one of the things I see coming in that's kind of changing. And I noticed that during COVID, during the George Floyd stuff, like every single peer Zoom I went to, class topic, I went to a conference and they had a whole list of topics, and almost not a single one was on mental health. It was all about racial this and multicultural this and DEI and So that's one of the things that kind of traced to Biden. And the other thing is that I think is getting introduced that's changing peer support is this emphasis on emotional and psychological safety that we talked about yesterday. That I looked at the original training materials are like my version of it, and that hardly showed up at all. There was some emphasis on physical safety, like keeping yourself physically safe if you're working with a difficult client, or making sure that your work environment is physically safe, but there's no mention of emotional or psychological safety. There's a lot of talk of resilience, self-empowerment, etc. So that I think is also changing, and that's going to shift that locus of control for something more internal and empowered to something more looking to external people, systems, etc. for solutions. How convenient for a bureaucracy. And because like when you're faced with the crisis, there's really two basic instincts. Um, like there's because you want to kind of restore equilibrium or homeostasis, or use the crisis to grow. But you can either like your instinct to master the crisis kicks in. You want to overcome it. You want to take charge of it. You want to get it under control, defeat it, etc. You want to exercise some agency over it. And the other is a powerful, powerful instinct in humans to abdicate responsibility, to just kind of like. Um, I was trying to watch Gone with the Wind the other day, and Scarlett is constantly saying, "I'll think about it tomorrow. I don't think about it today. I'll think about it tomorrow." To kind of renounce any responsibility for the thing, and have either the thing take care of itself or other people come in and take care of it, but to just kind of check out of it completely. And my version of peer support was very much like trying to foster and instill and awaken and develop that instinct to master your own internal and external crises and experiences and challenges and symptoms and whatever. And I think this shift to emotional psychological safety is going to start to open the door away from that, where it creates this codependent, maternalistic, mother-child rescuer, where because the way I've seen it work, both people, there's a payoff for both people. The person providing the safety gets some deep instinct of theirs fed as well, to protect and nurture and grow. But the person never develops out of that kind of maternal psychological womb that's being created for them. And that's where I think another danger in the future of peer support is. So these Republicans have just introduced this bill to axe all of that, cut it out, get rid of it, excise. Also, it would stop the federal grants that go to fund these initiatives. So it would cut off the source of the funding. So like that state equity department or some of these state initiatives that are showing up in my field, I almost guarantee some of that's funded with federal money. That would get cut off. And if it didn't reduce the programs completely, it would send a strong message, because here in Washington State, they're very sensitive to like the cues and trends coming out of Washington or what other states are doing. they're they don't seem to have a clear vision of their own. Their vision seems to be kind of aligning themselves with what they think is going to advance them the most. And again, this is just my subjective impression from being kind of on the periphery of that part of it. It's called the Dismantle DEI Act. It would prevent accreditation agencies from requiring DEI in schools and bar national securities associations from instituting diversity requirements for corporate boards. J.D. Vance says the DEI agenda is a destructive ideology that breeds hatred and racial division. It has no place in our federal government or anywhere else in society. That is a very eloquent statement of my own position and my own values. So after everything you've heard me talk about on the stream the past few weeks about the implicit bias and the DEI stuff and the trainings and all this crap coming in, And then I have from the Democrats and from Biden and from the left, and then I have these Republicans who just passed a bill to stop all of that and just magically wave a wand and cut it out. Like that's my dream, if only. That's like gay marriage. We never dreamed we would get gay marriage. I never dreamed that the DEI stuff could just disappear. What rational reason would I have for not supporting Republicans and voting against the Dems, especially when you look at Trump's executive order and Biden's executive order? So I guess that's the points I want to make with that. Did I put the link up? I'm sorry. Here we go. If y'all want to panel up. All right, let me do comments. Oh, okay, cool. Hey, Frank, if you're there. The one last night was a little low quality. I was wondering if there was a setting on the video where you got to choose what quality it played in, or whether it was just a poor copy. The ethno-nationalists want true diversity. Yeah. Because nationalism is not necessarily a bad thing. And I think every nation, since we currently still have them, and probably will for a while, if it's going to have a shared border, it needs some kind of shared story or identity or sense of unity that holds the people within that border together. And I don't necessarily know about the ethno part, but the like I lean nationalist myself, but that's the kind of nationalism I want, a nationalism that every American could share in, and a distinctive American identity, just like the British have one, the Canadians, the Australians. And we have one, we just are not conscious of what it is. Oh, it's worth it, Frank. I can sit here and keep talking for an hour just so we can get the high quality. Because the last season we watched, it was so like vivid and high def, and that was one of the things that added to it. Just my 2 cents on my preference. Oh wow! I already went half an hour. Well, that's really all I intended to do. So, oh, and other news. Hang on, I got a Cash App. Oh, okay. Well, I'm about to sign off and go join you in the Discord. Um, Hang on, yeah. I have a Cash App. I'm gonna put it on the ticker. It's Gen X Jeff 2. Gen X Jeff was taken. How rude. So yeah, see if that works. No, wait, hang on. And if you're not on Cash App for some reason, I think I have a referral thing where we each get a bonus if you sign up through the link. All right. That looks a little awkward, but I need to practice getting comfortable feeling like a whore. So I, I'm I'm surprised I'm not already, but for whatever reason, it's still that resistance is still there. So let me pop this in the chat to get some practice. I don't expect you to send me money. I'm not asking you to send me money. I just want to put the information out there. If people suddenly feel the spirit of Satan move inside of them, or some demon sits on their shoulder and tempts them into sending me money, I just want them to have the information to know where to channel that energy. That's all. And to practice feeling like a whore. Okay, well, if that's all for today, then hang on. What? Oh, let me turn that off. There we go. If that's all for today, I will see you in about 5 more hours to 5.5 hours? Really? That long? Okay. Uh, where we're going to look at Biden's mental health strategy that he put out after COVID. And part of that, I started looking at it. I haven't finished it in detail, but part of it, I suspect, is where some of this DEI and psychological, emotional safety stuff is coming from. That's fucking up my field. Or maybe let me modify that. It may have value for some people in some situations. Remember that level of self-determination, and at the bottom, it was people with very high support needs that are like just coming out of a crisis. They have very little autonomy, etc. So some of that may be appropriate for that level of care, but in addition to that, there should also be some building in of resiliency and self-determination and empowerment so that they can get out of that state and start going to the next levels upward toward that zone of transformation. And my intuition tells me, and partly observation, that if there's not something in there that ensures that, there's a temptation in this field to kind of lock into that dynamic when you're providing that emotional psychological safety, but you don't want to let them out of the womb. You don't want to let them. It's that mother instinct. And so the providers and the client both get really comfortable with this arrangement, and they just keep it going, keep going. There's no growth and development. There's stabilization, but then it almost becomes a form of unhealth in itself, like a form of stagnation, and even like an unhealthy codependence, a bait and switch. He said, I don't believe him, but he promises, he says, he swears up and down that he's going to come up and tell that Santa story by Christmas, probably on Christmas. But and that he's honorable and I can trust him, and he's going to keep his word. But when I see him come up and tell the story, then I will have believed it. I'll be like, oh, Frank just came up and told the story. Now he's probably telling the truth. So. All righty, that is Devil Coffee today. We'll do it again tomorrow. Every morning, you can count on it. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going away. You have me here 7 days a week. You're stuck with me. This demon is not getting banished anytime soon. Okay, well, like I said, the world we'll see. It's like Geraldo's vault. We'll find out if something's in it or not by December 26th. All right, I'm gonna go. Give me like 5 minutes. I'm pretty much ready. If you can get that HD version, but that'd be swell. I'm excited to see, and excited is the wrong word, to find out what happens to George, if we're stuck with him or if we get a relief from him. I'm kind of on the fence now, actually, though. Anyway, I'll see you there. And everyone else, I'll see you for the noon topic, Biden's mental health plan, and an open panel after that. And to each his own. To each his own. As somebody that's trans curious, I can see why you might see that in him. Say that about him. You call, you know him as a newscaster. That's not what I would call it, but he's more like the grandfather of the paddleverse. He was more like the flow state, or the machine, or the Paul enslaved, or one of us, of network television. And then Jerry Springer came along, and Sally Jesse, and all this. I think it culminated, probably peaked with Martin Downey Jr. I think that's about as extreme as it got. Wait, who? Geraldo? Was he really? I didn't know about that part. You seem to know a lot about him. Like no, or just like are aware of him as. There's a story there. I just know there is. Um, and I'm about to hear about it in about 2 minutes when I see you in the Discord. Get ready for it. Okay. Well, I'm on my way to get this business cleared up. You know me. I don't like to get misinformation put out there. I'm all about reality and facts. All right. Take care, y'all. See you soon.